Welcome. We are live. Different time. I'm Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Welcome to another edition of Talkin Sports with me and Yanez, star of Let's Rage Coogs, the unofficial post-game show of Houston Cougars football. Another star, rising star in the making, James Mueller. He's got fans all over the place now. Sports editor of the Daily Cougar. Young man, how are you?
Doing well.
Great. Andy, how are you? I'm looking at my phone, watching the end of the Las Vegas Aces Seattle Storm game here, which has seen buckets in the last 5 seconds from both teams. And A'ja Wilson made a layup, no call on travel. She did travel. Sue Bird, who's no, she's not. She's older than you guys. Hit a clutch corner three-pointer to put the team up 2 with half second left. And it looks like Las Vegas tied the game up on a layup after an inbounds with under a second on the clock. So it's going to overtime. Tied at 92. Game 3 of the WNBA semifinal series there. I know some folks tune in, probably rolling their eyes in their head. Kris, why are you talking about WNBA? Because I can. But we're going to talk about the Cougs a little bit more. Willy Gibson should be joining us from Ohio shortly. I'm happy to say that the Twitter is working today, so with the tweet. So that's good. I'm not sure what happened last week, but it's working now. So I'm going to copy and paste and have the scroll from Mr. Yanez's banner yesterday for Let's Rage Coogs, the post-game show. If you haven't caught it, shame on you. But you can go to, Pawd Slama Jama, Twitter?
Pawd Slama Jama on Twitter. There's also on the Pawd Slama Jama Spotify and Apple podcast playlist. And then obviously, of course, they can play it back on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel.
And last I saw on YouTube was nearing 400 views. So kudos to you guys, to you, Andy, Dayon Dunlap, Akib, and Justin Barbosa. Great job. A lot of positive feedback. James was able to join, was able to submit High Tech World, sent clips of Coach Holgorsen's press conference to Andy to play during the show. And then James joined in to give his thoughts on the win as well. So I'm going to give you guys the floor a lot. But as you see going across the screen there, and for listeners who check out the audio of this, Houston Cougars, 24th ranked, won in triple overtime over a good UTSA team, 37-35. Let me say that one more time. A good UTSA team. Vegas knew the line was 4, right? 4.5. Cougs favorite.
It actually went down to 3.5 right before the
There we go.
kickoff.
So Vegas knew. Vegas expected a close game. See anybody out there saying, it's not, it's a bad win, or the Cougs or blah, 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 all those kind of things. UTSA is a good team. UTSA is going to make some noise in the American when they join next year. They're a good team. Saying all that, going to bring Willy Gibson as well. There we go. Guys, I have concerns with the Cougs offensive line. They got pushed around a lot. The left guard, right guard had issues. Pick times in the game. Left tackle had issues getting beat. Right tackle had issues getting beat. Center spot. There were times in the game where the run game, UTSA pushed the Cougs offensive line back 3-4 yards. That's a concern, right? Andy, James?
Absolutely. I'll take it first. And it's something that Dana Holgorsen acknowledged post-game, where it was a bit of an interesting post-game presser, and I'm sure James can touch more about it, but the build-up, and something we mentioned during the Let's Rage Coogs post-game show, the build-up, I feel like it was, you had that interstate rivalry thing going, and then it really turned up on Thursday when Dana Holgorsen was his radio show on KPRC 9:50 a.m. where he talked about the crowd and, hey, the Alamo Dome, it's a good atmosphere, but we need to watch out to see if they pipe noise and whatnot. And that really kind of galvanized the UTSA, and they acknowledged it and they ran with it. They were really, really loud. And going back to the offensive line, like you mentioned, I feel like that atmosphere probably played a big factor into a lot of the mistakes when it came to penalties. There was a lot of false starts that were called on the offensive line, but absolutely not just of the false starts, but there were holding calls. There were times where, especially in the first 3 quarters, where Clayton Tune was trying to buy as much time as he could, because he literally had less than 2 seconds, a lot of plays, before he had a UTSA defender, right in his face trying to make a play. But that's something that Holgorsen acknowledged post game, where they have a lot of stuff they need to clean up. And he said UTSA is a good team. Obviously, of course, they were 12-2 a season ago. They're bringing back a lot of their key players. Obviously, of course, the main one, their top 3 receivers, and Frank Harris, the quarterback, who, he showed that he looked like he was I believe Holgorsen's a 6-year starter, or 6-year quarterback.
You're a senior, yeah.
And you could tell just with the poise he showed throughout much of the game, being able to elude a lot of Houston's defenders. And now it's on to Texas Tech. They were able to rally back and win, which is crucial for Houston. A very, very good win, like you said at the top of the show, Kris. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how they look week 2 against Texas Tech, and hopefully they can get a lot of things polished up, because I absolutely agree that O-line's a big concern heading into week 2.
James, what do you say? And
Yeah,
Willy Gibson is joining us from Ohio. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you?
And we were going to talk about Buckeyes winner Notre Dame. I got that scroll and coming too, so don't worry.
Oh, yes, sir. We're
Okay.
good.
James, you got it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Andy for the most part. I think even with first game, there was way too many. I don't think the penalties and false start holdings were excusable. You expect a few of those in early games, but even though this offensive line looks new, you got Jack Freeman at center, who didn't start last year, but it started the 2 years before. Pat Paul's back. He's been a starter. Cameron Johnson started a ton of games last year. At right tackle was an issue. That was a question mark. They sort of rotated in between 2 guys, Ruben and Lance. And so they need to figure that out for sure. But even though it's a new look offensive line, there was no reason that these guys all had experience. So there was no reason for that many mistakes. And so, yeah, it is a little bit concerning. They'll get on tape and fix things up as they prepare for Tech. But the big thing in my book is just how are they going to go about this right tackle position? I mentioned this last night on Let's Rage Coogs, but the biggest thing last year was they had the same starting offensive line for all 14 games. Dana's first 2 years, they had like 22 different combinations, nearly a different one each game. Sorry. So if you got to keep rotating in if you can't find that consistency early on, it's going to continue to be a struggle. You need that consistent group of 5 that you hope stays healthy and that you can just really rely on. Because if you're having to rotate guys in and out, you never know what you're going to get. And it's just going to be difficult to it's just going to make life a lot more difficult on Clayton too.
Agreed. And concerns with the O-line, I'm going to deal with that a little bit more. The noise was a factor, clearly. Props to the fans in the Alamo Dome. Well, I want to get your thoughts on this as an outsider looking in. Mm-hmm. Crowd noise.
Mm-hmm.
What about silent counts? Just silent, you don't have to. You go in the huddle, call plays from the sideline, whatever, and go on one. Or have the right guard, left guard look back at the quarterback. When the quarterback lifts up his leg, he's ready for the snap. Guard taps the center, snap the ball. This is not hard. There are ways to mitigate crowd noise. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, to hear Andy, when he talked about Dana Holgorsen saying, I hope they don't pipe in crowd noise, that tells me that's someone who's concerned. Because why are you focused on the crowd noise?
Yep.
Your job is to make sure your team is prepared regardless of the circumstance that they face. So the fact that you mentioned that lets me know that it's on his mind. And it was on his mind for him to even say that. So just, again, as an outsider looking in, that's the first thing I thought of when I heard. And this is about the things I saw through. I was able to watch his media availability on Monday, and I'll point those things out later. But yeah, that to mention crowd noise, What's the concern?
Agreed.
If you're prepared.
Agreed. Preparation. Now, my next pebble I'm tossing at the Cougs in offensive scheming. We talked about it last show, previous shows, all the hype surrounding Tank Dell being one of the most exciting receivers in the country. 2 targets for most of 3 quarters. I don't care what UTSA or any defense is doing to Tank Dell. If he is your best playmaker, you need to design schemes to get him the ball. Period. I don't care if it's in the backfield, reverses. I don't care. They were too passive for nearly 3 quarters, and they trailed 21-7. They got more aggressive, opened the playbook, and lo and behold, they scored more points. This is my, part of the show. I'm getting on my soapbox. I want my young men to respond to this. The Cougs, they're ranked now. Okay? They want to be nationally relevant program. Teams, especially UTSA, in-state rival, circled this game on the calendar. They were hyped for this. They wanted to beat UH, be their first win over a ranked opponent. So why are the Cougs coming out this passive play calling and this, well, yeah, Tank's on the field, but he's going to be a decoy. Forget that. If he's so great, prove it. Andy, James, you got it.
Yeah, I'll take it first. I think one of the big things now, it's not going to excuse, like you mentioned, for the first 3 quarters. I guess it's a various factors, and there was a couple of times where they just kept going 3 and out, where on third downs that they would pass it. Clayton would hit a couple of receivers, and I know Sam Brown and Matt Golden had a couple of drops. So there were key crucial drops in key situations that were able to overcome that on some of the drives. But that played a factor. And then something that was probably a bit interesting that Dana Holgorsen had touched on the Monday leading up to the game was that he throughout training camp, he's mentioned how they felt like overall this is probably the best receiving core they've had around Clayton since Holgorsen has been here. And he said he felt pretty confident that they're too deep at each receiver position, but he followed that up with a caveat, which is he still wanted to be a run-first team, and he wanted to establish the run, which might have factored into something early on, especially, when there was still in the first half, maybe trying to get some of the ground game going. But, I agree, especially when it comes to play calling. That's something when you look at the discussion boards among UH fans, that was something that they pointed out as well, where they felt that the play calling was a lot more conservative until the fourth quarter came around. And you can't forget about that penalty that UTSA got called on, because they got to stop on fourth. I believe it was 4th and 2, and it was in Houston territory. I think they were somewhere in the 30-yard line. Yeah, near the 30-yard line. If UTSA doesn't get called, I'm not sure if there was too many men on the field or illegal substitution. They don't get called for that. That's probably game over right there. That's, UTSA takes over, and worst case scenario, they're already in field goal range, so they probably make it at least 24-7. They get that break, and kudos for Houston being able to keep their poise and go down the field, and then they capitalize with a touchdown on that drive. But there was a lot of instances. I mean, even on that 4th down stop, where UTSA was able to initially get the stop, they went to Stacey Snead trying to run up on 4th and 2, and UTSA did a great job of being able to stop Houston's run game a lot of times.
James?
Yeah, I mean, it's on Tank Dell. It's one thing if, Dana's talked about wanting to be a run-first team. It's one thing if the offensive line's getting a great push, you're averaging 5 yards a carry. They were not doing that.
Thank you.
So you can't shy away from your best player. You saw what we all know what Tank can do in open space. Even though the punt return was called back, you saw how electric he was when he just got a little bit of space. Yep. And it probably should have been a touchdown.
It should not have been called back. Yeah, Dana Holgorsen made no bones about that.
I mean, by the rule of letter of the law, it's a penalty. It wasn't a huge shove. But go ahead, James. We'll get into it in a second.
Yeah, regardless, I mean, you can't change that. But that was just an example of, if you get on the ball in space, you have a chance.
Yes.
Run a little bubble screen for him. Like Kris was saying, do some reverse or, get him in the backfield. Do something to get him the ball. Because like you saw, I wrote a story on this that went up this morning about the 2-point conversion in the second overtime. It was a busted play. but Tune still
Playmaker.
was Tank because he trusted him. And guess what? He gave Tank a chance, and Tank came up with an incredible catch. Give him a chance to do something because, I mean, if there's one guy on that offense that if you got to go to someone, it's him. And he can make the incredible plays happen. It's not going to happen every single time. But I'd rather, if I'm Houston, I'd rather lose going to Tank and he fails me than ignoring him the whole game or going to other options.
And let me say this, because I've been critical of him, last season. Clayton Tune was a man Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. He poised under pressure. He dealt with a shaky offensive line, great scrambles, that leap for the game winner, 2-point conversion. Looked like Superman. John Elway, old school, crashed into the end zone. Props to him for his performance. And Coach Holgorsen mentioned as well. Don't want him running that much as he did yesterday because some of that was out of necessity. There were times he was Houston's best running back. I'm not sure you're going to live with that much success with your quarterback in this offense being your best running back. But Clayton Tune came through. He delivered. He was clutch. The only blemish really was that fumble when he early in the game. He kind of held the ball loosely and paid for it. But he played great. Just imagine what the offense can do with better protection. And the irony is, with the offensive line, my issue most of the time was run blocking because there were times they did a great job pass protecting. Clayton had a lot of time. Coverage, there's a lot of zone underneath. I'm guessing is that why they didn't find open men down the field. Could have been a lot of guys running wrong routes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was also
and there were a lot of drops too.
Yeah.
Clayton too made a lot of very good passes on the money. Receiver dropped the ball. So that's also an area that room for improvement there. Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to rely on your knowledge and expertise of the Buckeyes.
You didn't watch the game? No, I'm joking.
A little bit. A little bit. I'll type the wrong score there. Let me get up. Who was the best player on the Buckeyes?
Yesterday, it would probably still be CJ Stroud. Well, no, it's Mike Hall. Michael Hall Jr. on defense. The defensive tackle was very disruptive. He made his first start. Very disruptive throughout camp, and he made his presence known yesterday on the defensive side of the ball. Ohio State's defense has been much maligned. Ryan Day basically fired his entire defensive coaching staff in the offseason, brought in a whole new staff. Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State, the $2 million answer, just to be completely transparent. Yeah, the D coordinator at Ohio State makes $2 million.
That's twice as much as Doug Belk, UA's defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he went to Gene Smith at the end of the season and said changes have to be made. Gene Smith gave him the checkbook and said, go make it happen. So, well, for all intent and purposes, to be accurate journalistically, it's 1.9. So he's making 1.9 million. But he wrote the check. And it paid dividends yesterday. First play of the game, he ran a safety blitz. It missed the tackle, and it was a 54-yard reception on the first play of the game for Notre Dame. After that, they tightened up. Second half, 20 plays for 76 yards, 6 straight punts to end the game for the defense. So the defense showed up, and I would say Michael Hall was the best player.
And how was their push up front in the middle of the defense?
It was good. He ran a lot of stunts. He runs a lot of, for lack of a better term, helter-skelter defense. He runs a 4-2-5. So 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5. His safety is pretty much the quarterback of the Jim Knowles defense. So you had Lathan Ransom, who's been the teacher's pet of Knowles the entire preseason, and he showed why yesterday. But Michael Hall on the defensive line pretty much ran the show.
Now I'm going back to Andy and James, talk about the Cougs' defensive effort. I got concerns there too. The tackles, the end rushers did a good job. Pressure up the middle, on the line, nothing. Linebackers, safeties. I mean, hell, the game time field goal, UTSA went right down the middle of the field. the middle of the field when you need, they don't have what
23 seconds.
No
23
timeouts.
seconds. No timeouts. And they just went down the middle of the field. No pressure up the front. Secondary, the pass to the tight end was a great play call by UTSA. Their huge tight end going against the 5'10", wherever he is, cornerback for UH. Size mismatch. That's smart. But great play design there. But the Cougs up the middle of the field, defensively, got to get better. Texas Tech may just carve up the Cougs this coming Saturday in the middle of the defense. What do you guys thoughts on that, James and Andy?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, one thing, I mean, missed tackles were a huge story. You saw the ends getting home to Harris, but they couldn't get him down in the first half. They probably should have had like 6 or 7 sacks at least. They finally got a few in the second half. They couldn't get to him, but like you said, the push up the middle, it was non-existent for the most part. So that's concerning. And then, like I said, missed tackles, you got to shore that up because I mean, look at UTSA's first 2 touchdowns. First one, the receiver runs a short route over the middle. Missed arm tackle, weak arm tackle, takes it 30 plus yards, whatever it was, to the house. The next one, Nelson Caesar gets to Harris, can't bring him down for the sack. Harris does the rest on his legs and, takes it to the house. And Nelson Caesar said this after the game that he felt like UH's defense shot themselves in the foot more than UTSA caused them problems because they just. Yes, UTSA is a good offense and they made some plays, but they just like you said, they made so many mistakes that they were lucky to get out of that like they did.
Andy?
No, absolutely. James brought up all the great points. And I think especially early on, at least throughout training camp heading into the game, the big kind of question mark was going to be with the corners in the secondary just because of who they lost from a season ago in Marcus Jones and Demarion Williams. And I think really it was surprising when like James mentioned, I think initially Houston's defenders were being able to get into the backfield and cause Harris to rush, but they just weren't able to finish plays. And there was various times where it seemed like, they were just a second late, where if they were able to get there a second sooner, they could bring Harris down and he would make a big play. And I think that's obviously has to be the biggest, point of emphasis for Houston heading into week 2 against Texas Tech. There were way too many missed tackles. And even a couple of times, again, where the D-line itself, they were flagged for a couple of offside penalties, pre-snap penalties that, like James said, it's just, they were just shooting themselves in the foot. And yeah, that 23 seconds to be able to carve up down the field 2 chunk plays literally back to back, that can't happen. And then even in the overtime periods where similar thing again, where going back to when Clayton Tune found Tank Dell in that I believe that was a double overtime where they got up 35-27. And yeah, I can't remember if it was I think Houston had managed to get UTSA into a third down situation.
Yes, it was third
and then Frank Harris makes a crazy play where it looks like Houston's defenders are going to collapse and they're going to have him, and they are unable to bring him down. And lo and behold, he somehow finds a receiver and they score the touchdown to cut it to 2, and then on the 2-point conversion, it's literally almost no resistance on the sneak or draw that they ran for Harris. That's unacceptable. That's stuff that they have to clean up. And to their credit, you mentioned Doug Belk. I think that's probably a group where I'd be more confident in them being able to be much more solid going into week 2. But it's certainly a point of concern, especially the missed tackles, because that's like James said, those were a lot of touchdowns. A couple of the touchdowns that UTSA made where, that was just really more Houston not being able to execute than UTSA was being able to make plays.
I think on that scramble up the middle by Frank Harris, was it Donovan Mitchell, number 3 for the Cougs? Mm-hmm. He was held. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Held on, with help.
They brought that up. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a hold. That was a blown call there. But this is for everybody. You guys, Will, Andy, James, and the audience too, joining us on YouTube as well as Twitter on Folks Talk Sports. I've been curious about this for a while. It's 11 on 11, 11 offense, 11 defense, quarterback. Why don't more defenses, high school, college, pro, put a spy on the quarterback, especially when you know you got a quarterback who can scramble. Both teams yesterday, Frank Harris made plays with his feet. Clayton made plays with his feet. No spy, no. We very rarely saw anybody near them in terms of like linebacker, safety, whoever. You see in the middle of the field, got eyes on wherever the quarterback's going. Nothing. Frank Harris, Coogs ends, great rushes. But Frank Harris had room to step up, middle of the play, and then scramble up the middle wherever he wanted to go. Clayton scrambles. Have y'all noticed that? Well, one is that, am I just nuts? Why don't defenses have more, one spot, one person, you got to have the athlete for it, of course, on the quarterback to mitigate a scrambling quarterback's effectiveness? Will, some of you want to chime in a bit?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Go ahead. I'll
go ahead. Hold on.
To the distinguished gentleman from Texas.
No, that's a good point, especially when it comes to what, like you mentioned with Frank Harris and both Clayton and Frank Harris, where it seemed like whenever they were able to step up, they could just honestly make any play that they wanted, and they would probably at the very least be able to get 5 yards before they saw any opposing defenders come up and tackle them. I'm not entirely sure. It could just be that defensive coordinators just prefer, instead of having a spy, if they're going to use that extra defender, maybe just a straight up rush on a blitz rather than just have a designated sneak. But that's a good question brought up, and honestly, I'm not entirely too sure.
James, Will?
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say something along that line. I think more so defensive coordinators have their scheme. And then two, you take that spy that entire game. One, quarterback gets you. Then what? Then two, that you're not running your defense at that point. You're allowing the offense to dictate your defense. And as a defensive coordinator, you want that defense to dictate to that quarterback what he can do. But I think it's more so the scheme and the defense that the defensive coordinator has, they have confidence in, and they're going to make sure that they run what's gotten them there, so to speak, what's been successful for them in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big things that come to my mind with that is either one, like Andy brought up, you don't want to sacrifice that extra rusher, of course. You want to be able to get that pressure on the quarterback. But two, some teams, especially like UH with just, a younger, newer looking secondary, you might need some extra help out there. You might want an extra guy back playing in coverage. And so then you're saying, I value, our coverage scheme and, making sure that a receiver doesn't break wide open over, I'm willing to, put that above, let the quarterback make a play with his legs rather than beat us deep. I'm going to use this extra guy in coverage.
Okay. All three of you guys made legit responses. My retort to all of that is, if the quarterback in the game is kicking your butt with his legs, you need to make adjustments. Okay, whatever you got to do to your schemes, if it's not working, if the quarterback is beating with his legs, okay, scrambling for touchdowns, big plays, you got to do something different because it's not working. If the quarterback is stepping up in the middle of your pressure, you're getting great pressure from your ends, but nothing from your middle, your defensive linemen, not your tackles, ends. You need a tackles to do something up the middle. You need a middle linebacker, something to stop and contain the quarterback in the middle. Because if you have that, then your ends could come around and get him from behind. But if you got nobody there in the middle of the field, just scoot on around. In-game adjustments is part of football too.
Oh, without question. I think halftime adjustments are 65% of the game. That goes without. Yeah, even if you were playing and that didn't work, you got to adjust regardless of what happened. So
I think both defenses didn't do that in the second half, especially because Frank Harris, I don't follow UTSA. He's a dude. Okay, he can play. He's an old man, but he's experienced, and he found ways to get it done for his team and give them a chance to win. And like I said, UTSA is a good football team. Okay, we'll see what they do the rest of the season. None of us expect the Cougs to be considered highly ranked in the CFP rankings, but UTSA's success won't hurt the Cougs. I tell you that. I don't see them losing too many games the rest of the season. Speaking of CFP, Mr. Yanez, Mr. Mueller, Mr. Gibson, the higher-ups Friday voted unanimously to expand the playoff to 12. And they basically said to their ADs, no, we want this money soon. So we're going to 12. Y'all need to figure it out, make it happen. Willie, what do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up the money, but it's really not the money because the top 4 teams get buys. So it's really not as much money as it appears on paper, because you get 4 games in the first round, then you get 2 and then 1. So yeah, you get a few extra games, but not as many as you think, because like I said, the top 4 don't play. It was interesting that they went to 12 and not 8 from that perspective. And then the third thing I thought of was your guy, Michael Resco, because he's been, all I heard since I've been doing this is the Power 6. I'm like, hey, there's no Power 6. Well, guess what? The top 6 conference champions are in this. And I'm like, man, he's ahead of his time, because he's been screaming Power 6 the entire time.
and I'll let you, Andy, James, y'all add your thoughts in a second. But the thing that struck me is this. The top 4 ranked conference champions will receive a first-round bye and be seeded 1 through 4, regardless of the rankings by the selection committee.
Yep.
So if in 25 or 2026, UTSA wins the American, and they are one of the top, they're going to get ranked as a conference champion because they're conference champion. But they could be 16th, 17th in the CFP ranked by the committee. I can't imagine some folks, Georgia, somebody from a power program, from the Power 2. Wait, UTSA gonna get a chance to host a game, and we what? So that surprised me. What are your thoughts overall about going to 12? Andy, James?
I'll go. I'll go first. I was gonna say, you kind of heard rumblings at the beginning of the week, and I can't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday. And I remember you shared a tweet, and I said I'll believe it when I see it. And then, well, lo and behold, come the end of the week, it happened. And I think overall, it's interesting the formats that are being reported. It's going to be, like you mentioned, it'll be top 6 conference champions that kind of automatically get in, and there's 6 at-large bids. I think overall, for the benefit of the sport, it's going to be a better thing just to have. And I know the top 4 programs are going to be like, oh, this is the argument that I've heard where it's a waste of time, is what I've heard a lot, because we know that at the end of the day, it'll still be the Alabamas, Ohio States, the premier programs that are going to make it to the semifinal. But I think overall, it's much better when, at the very least, there's at least hope for more fan bases that, any given day that their team has a chance to go out there and at the very least host a first-round college football playoff game. That's probably benefit, not overall for whatever schools make it, but just overall for the sport in general. There's more interest in it, especially more games when there's bigger stakes. No offense to the current bowls, but even outside the semifinals and the college football playoff. I know there's been a lot of talk about the New Year's Six Bowls, but even then, is there really anything, if you're not a part of that CFP, it doesn't really matter? And I think this is much better for college football overall, because it does raise stakes. There's more games that are going to be important, they're going to matter. And obviously, of course, there's more value in the regular season, because, look at Houston right now with their 24. If they were playing under that format, they would have a legit chance to be able to get into that top 12, rather than, the way it is now, where they can go undefeated and it's not going to matter. They're not going to be a top 14.
James?
Yeah, I think the expansion overall is a good thing. I wish, like Will talked about, I wish it was 8 rather than 12. The biggest problem I have with the 12-team playoff, or the way they've set it up, is the 6 conference champion auto bids, and because I think that's going to hurt from a competitive standpoint. You're still going to get these blowouts in games because, look, like take the American. The American's going to be a lot weaker next year. No one's going to debate that. With Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF leaving, they're not bringing in people. So you could have, a 7-5 Memphis conference championship from the American make the playoff, and good for them, but it's not going to help from a competitive standpoint. I know people have, that's one of the big things people want, better games, because typically semifinals, even under this current format, have been blowouts in a lot of the championship games too. But then the second thought is, there's more margin for error for the big dogs. You can see a 3-loss Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia team get in, and they can make some noise. I think that's possible.
You won't see a 3-loss.
They're never going to lose 3
team.
losses.
I'm picking.
But in the current format, and I just like value of winning your conference championship means something. Okay, you at least got a chance at a playoff. Okay, the current format. Yesterday it was an embarrassment, and this conference has been consistent in it. The Pac-12. Right now, their season's over. Okay, they have no chance. Nobody from the Pac-12 has a chance after one game to be in this current playoff. It's over after 1 week. What the hell? Utah could win the conference, but they lost to Florida game 1. No chance in the world. That's been one of my biggest gripes of the current format. So, Willy Gibson.
Yes, sir.
I don't know the AD at Iowa's name off the top of my head. It escapes me right now.
Gary Barndridge, I think. Yeah.
Your man, Gene Smith at the Ohio State, earlier in the week, was the first person to say, and you got the facts to back it up as well, that Ohio State is not in favor of the Big Ten expanding.
Well,
elaborate, please, sir.
Yeah, Gene Smith is the man, for lack of a better term. He used to start at Ohio State, and this is no arrogance. This is not, I know I joke and clown a lot about Ohio State, but in all seriousness, Ohio State is a straw that stirs the drink as far as the Big Ten is concerned. Ohio State was definitely on board in adding USC and UCLA. Strictly strategic, strictly financial and television purposes. The number 2 media market in the country. Very much interested in adding those teams. They're not interested in adding Eugene, Oregon. They're not interested in adding Seattle, Washington. They're not. So, for the meetings that they said occurred, and they did occur. Those meetings did occur, but those schools met with legal counsel.
Right.
They never met with a school president. They never met with Commissioner Kevin Warren. They never met with a school athletic director. So I liken it to someone knocking at your door and your parents saying, go see what they want and tell me. That's what the meeting was. No traction. Just, okay, you want to talk? Okay, I'll send my attorney and he'll report back and tell me what you said.
Okay, Will, my question for you is, does it have to be unanimous from the Big Ten to decide on adding teams?
It does.
Okay, well,
it has to be 16.
Okay, so I know that. That's why we got Mr. Gibson on from the Ohio State and Columbus. So or how about, is this a negotiating ploy to get more money from the networks to increase the pie for the Big Ten teams?
Well, there are contingencies in place in the new deal that if other teams are added, the pot increases. But Ohio State is not interested in adding any other teams. 16 is it. Now that sounds very arrogant. I know it does, but it's fact that Gene Smith is not interested in Washington, Oregon, Arizona State, Arizona, and for most people say it makes sense. Well, you have the Big Ten West and
Houston.
Well,
In due time, Will. In due time, man. 5 years, going to have expanded TD-ECU Stadium, 6,000 fans in there, sold out.
60, huh?
Oh yeah.
60.
I'm leaving all out to put it all out there in the universe. Oh yeah.
Okay. It was 106 in the horseshoe last night. I digress.
You gotta start somewhere, Will.
Okay, we're on the Big Ten. Could I ask Will a quick question?
Yes,
please.
So you mentioned UCLA. Obviously, we all saw the embarrassment with attendance yesterday. Do you think this Big Ten thing is going to help with that at all? Obviously, we know the LA market, but just attendance has been a problem there for a while, anyways, in football. But to only get 27 and change at the Rose Bowl, like
attendance is a problem at Rutgers too,
Yep.
but it's the New York market, and I learned that a long time ago, James. I get it. Yeah, I saw the same shot, but it's the number 2 media market in the country, so they're going to get those eyes. They may not get the seats in the building, but they'll get the eyes on the TV screen. It may be 27,000 at the Rose Bowl, but in January, when Ohio State comes to Pauley Pavilion, it'll be a sellout. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of that 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. Yeah, football stirs the drink, and yeah, UCLA right now is not there, but somebody's going to be watching in LA, 9 a.m. when UCLA plays at Camp Randall and plays Wisconsin.
And plus, being in the LA market gets the Big Ten Network on whatever the cable provider is for LA.
Yes.
So that's also part of this. They're not really concerned about the state, the stadium attendance.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the gate.
Because you get on New York market, whatever it is, the satellite provider in New York. They're on the Big Ten, is a part of that package. Sponsors, money, cable bill. Yep. You're paying for Big Ten Network, whether you know it or not. You're paying for the Big Ten Network. Yep. So doing the same thing in LA. Okay, no. Willy Gibson, Mr. Gibson. So, are you saying that there won't be any Big Ten expansion if it's not Notre Dame?
I'm not saying there won't be any. I'm saying there's not going to be any Big Ten expansion. Period. You heard it here. Not including Notre Dame. Including Notre Dame.
I'm putting it right up there. If he happens to be wrong, hit him up on Twitter at some point in the future.
Yeah, put that.
Yeah.
Get at me.
So Will Gibson 7 on Twitter. Andy, what are your thoughts on that? That kind of kills a lot of stuff. But what are your thoughts on that?
That means the Houston has to call up the SEC. No, I'm joking. Yeah, that's interesting. Even Notre Dame, I think it'd be interesting to hear from a Notre Dame perspective if that. We just talked about the new CFP format where it would be the top 6 conference champions, and then the 6 at-large bids. Well, where does Notre Dame fall in that? Are they like forever going to be stuck in the 5 range, in the 6 range, or what would it be? This the top where they wouldn't be able to get where they wouldn't be able to. Yeah, they wouldn't even be able. Yeah, they would never be able to host a bye or have a bye either. I think that's going to be interesting going forward if that's kind of the scenario where it goes towards. What do their school officials and what do they provide? And if the Big Ten isn't going to expand, that's certainly interesting because I know obviously, of course, that's kind of where a lot of the noise has been when it comes to expansion. When it comes to not necessarily taking Washington and Oregon, but kind of Notre Dame being the prize that the Big Ten would eye. So certainly interesting if what Will said is true and they don't expand.
But listen, it's what you just said. It's always been there. Notre Dame's always been the prize, but yet Penn State joined the Big Ten, Nebraska's joined the Big Ten, USC's joined the Big Ten, UCLA's joined the Big Ten. Is Notre Dame truly the prize? If all these schools have jumped ahead of the prize and joined the Big Ten, I'm not saying that you. I'm just
no,
in general. Yeah, I'm like, nah. they're not the problem. Yeah, Notre Dame is, New Rockney win one for the Gipper. That's great, but Notre Dame they haven't done anything in like 30 years in football.
Right.
30 years. So are they really the prize?
We're going to shift gears, but one last thing on this. With Mr. Gibson's statements on no expansion for the Big Ten and the CFP expanding to 12, is the Pac-12 now safe? Based on what we've heard today and discussing on today's Folks Talking Sports. Andy, James, Will, because if the Big Ten does not expand, does not add Oregon, Washington, Stanford, that's the surefire way to lead to the demise of the Pac-12. Because if that happens, then the Big 12 would take Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, whatever, and kneecap the Pac-12 completely. But if the Big Ten does not add any more teams, plus you got an automatic spot if you win a conference championship in the expanded CFP, is the Pac-12 now safe?
I think it's hard for me to call any conference other than the SEC and Big Ten safe, just because we've seen how quickly things can change. But I do think, yes, if that scenario plays out and the Pac-12 stays at where it's at now, post losing USC and UCLA, it's definitely, I guess, more appealing to the schools that are in it. And even if they maybe want to poach a few schools from another conference, just because they're like, we have a direct path to the playoff now. That's potential money for a university hosting a game, things like that. So I think it puts them in a better position, but I wouldn't call them safe.
Andy?
Agree. I think in the short term, certainly, it kind of calms the thing where, especially when there was over the summer when UCLA and USC made the jump, where there was a talk, that's the future that we're going in. It's going to be super conferences. And it's going to be the SEC, Big Ten, and then everybody else that's not going to be considered top two. I think with this new format, it kind of cools things down, at least for a little bit, because like you mentioned, there's going to be, there's a viable option to being able to be a part of those top 12 and not necessarily having to be one of those top two conferences where that the SEC and the Big Ten champion probably have their spot secured, and then the two at-large bids under the format it is now, well, it's going to be really hard to kind of have an argument over any team that has a Big Ten or SEC schedule. So I think it buys them some time. But like James said, I think it's hard to be able to call any conferences not in those top two safe, just because you never know when the SEC, Big Ten, maybe not, or maybe so. If they come called, then any school that's not in those two conferences are going to make the jump.
Fair enough. One last thing, we're going to talk Cleveland Cavaliers in a second. I asked about it last week. I mentioned it last week about the possibility of a linear Big 12 network. I got an answer to that question, if it made sense. I'm not going to say who the person is, but you've seen him on Twitter. He's been quoted a lot, interviewed a lot. He's retired. That's a big hint who I got the answer from. He said it was probably too late in the game for a linear Big 12 network. Then the day after that, another person said that with the negotiations that the Big 12 will begin, I guess, Tuesday of this week with its TV partners, ESPN and Fox, that transitioning the Longhorn Network to a Big 12 network is part of the discussions. So what are your thoughts on that, Andy, James, Will?
I think that just goes to show where we're at that time where everyone has reports, and you're just waiting to see what the actual kind of end game will actually end up being. I think for the most part, it's interesting when you think of having a Big 12 linear network where the person told you that it's probably too late in the game. I think there's always a benefit just to having a dedicated network just for your conference. And I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, it probably would benefit the Big 12 as a part of those negotiations with UT and if they end up leaving sooner, I think it wouldn't hurt to be able to have that additional platform to be able to showcase not only the current teams you have, but just overall the conference as a whole, and have that outlet.
James?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Andy has said, no one really knows exactly what's going to happen. I'd need to see, a full breakdown and get super detailed financial information to give you like a great answer on that. But the main thing for the Big 12 is if you do decide to go this, you got to ensure that it's not going to be another Longhorn Network type thing. We talked about it last show, how that's it's been a miserable failed experience. And so is the demand there? And how are you going to ensure that if the Big 12 network does become a reality, you got to ensure that, it financially makes sense and it's going to boost things because the positive is you do got a commissioner who's experienced in the media department. So that's a positive, but I mean, overall it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen.
Well, what do you think about a linear Big 12 network? Probably be with the support of ESPN.
Yeah. As everyone's always has already said, it's hard to say, man, because this thing is liquid. This thing is liquid by the second. So it would maybe right now may not be in 3 hours, literally. So I mean, yeah, that's really outside of definitively saying the Big Ten is done expanding. I really won't say, anything can happen. I know that's a cop-out answer, but.
Well, we got you right there with the floor now, sir. Cleveland Cavaliers acquired Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
Expound on the trade, sir. Your thoughts on it.
The time is now. Asset acquisition is over. It's time because ever since LeBron James Sr. got to differentiate now. I'll get into that in a second. But ever since LeBron James Sr. Signed with the Los Angeles Lakers, the Cavaliers have been an asset acquisition. And you guys remember, I was almost a year ago when Lauri Markkanen was signed by the Cavs and the signing trade. I'm like, what is he doing? Yep. Kobe Altman, this is terrible. What? No one else is signing this cat. What are you doing? Well, he was playing chess is what he was doing because that was a primary chip in him. Now, I'm not saying he was eyeing Donovan Mitchell this entire time when he signed Lauri Markkanen or traded for Lauri Markkanen. I'm not saying that. However, he used that contract, that player, along with a signing trade to College Sexton and Ochai Ajabi. I probably should still learn how to say that name, but and he traded it for a 26-year-old All-Star that's averaged no less than 20 points a game in his 5-year career, and he's been to the playoffs every year. So now, Kobe Altman pushed all his chips to the middle of the table, Jim Fossil style. Look that up, Jim Fossil, New York Giants. He pushed all his chips to the middle of the table, Jim Fossil style, and said it's time to go.
James, what were your thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, I mean, the Cavs. I mean, I didn't expect the Cavs to be in that play, but I think it was a good move. They've already got a nice young core. I still think they're probably a year or two away from being serious championship contenders, but they can make some noise in the playoffs. And bringing in a guy like Mitchell, who Will just talked about, all his accolades, he's a proven scorer. I mean, the Cavs have built things right, in my opinion, and I mean they continue to trend in the right direction.
Andy?
No, like Will said, in terms of the time is now. Cleveland has done a spectacular job of being able to, the moment LeBron James Sr., since we do have to differentiate that, like Will said, left Cleveland for the Lakers. It's got to be marvelous if you're in Cleveland to finally have a team where, it's not necessarily revolving around LeBron James and you have expectations for heading into the season. And I think the move, I know a lot of people, especially, when it comes to the Donovan Mitchell trade per se. They're like, oh, it's a nice move for Cleveland, but does Donovan Mitchell really move the needle and this and that? I think it's an excellent move for Cleveland because now you have a core that's still relatively young, and it's going to get a chance to learn by experience, for the lack of a better phrase, where, they're probably going to almost certain that they're going to end up being one of the playoff teams in the Eastern Conference, which is going to be marvelous for a lot of players that they're still young. They still haven't necessarily had that playoff experience, even though they did play in the play-in game this past season. And you're at a point where you can compete, and the players in the core overall are still young enough where they can get better overall. And now Cleveland's at a point where they kind of have who they believe is going to lead them, and now they can just go about being able to perfect the team and compete. Like James said, they probably have a much longer window, and it's a prime example of how to do a rebuild of your team.
Okay, longer window. I agree with that. Wrap it up with this. A couple things for all three of you guys. Today, September 4th, with Donovan Mitchell, are the Cavs better than the Bucks?
No.
Brooklyn?
I'd take
Depends. It depends.
Yeah, you see me right? Like, yeah.
Boston?
No.
Philly?
Probably, I'll give the edge to Philly.
Philly.
Chicago?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they're in that category.
In that
Probably
category.
highest.
Okay, that's not better than Chicago.
Yeah.
In that
No,
category.
I think they're better than Chicago, but they're like in that category where
Miami?
the four teams.
Which Miami?
What do you mean by that?
Which Miami is going to show up?
Well, we could say the same thing. I'm pouring cold water on the trade from this perspective.
Yeah.
The Cavs now are expected to win.
Yeah.
Okay? The Hawks last season realized and discovered our expectations can disrupt and hurt young teams. So we're going to see how the young Cavs, they got talent. Very, very formidable front court. Very offensive-minded backcourt. I'm not sure those guys could do anything worth a damn defensively against other good backcourts, let alone elite backcourts.
Oh, sure.
But, so higher expectations, we'll see what they do on that. It's a good deal, solid deal. It's a way to build. It's a way for a young team like the Rockets, Detroit, Orlando. You got all these assets. At some point, you got to put your chips on the table and make an aggressive move. So the East is stacked. I'm looking forward to basketball season. September 26th, I think, same for the Cavs, media day.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it here. We're going to talk about that throughout. We're going to wrap it up, see if I can pull it up here without messing up. I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. Let's see. What about that jersey there, Willy Gibson? The green and gold Rockets Hardwood Classic San Diego Rockets uniform.
It's cool. It's cool.
Andy, James?
Yeah, I like it. I mess with it, especially I like the kind of the touch of the Nike logo, where it's a bit of a throwback with the Nike logo as well. I think overall it's a pretty good scheme, and I like it.
James?
Yeah, I mean it's a nice jersey. Other than the Credit Karma doesn't help, but
That's a sponsor though, so
yeah, I know. I mean, money drives things, and
Yep.
but I think it's a nice touch, and we've seen the Rockets explore with a bunch of different things.
Better than the blue one.
Wise, have they announced? Are they going to do like a special court, sort of like they did last year with the I forget what the uniform jersey was called, but how they changed the floor?
They haven't announced that yet. No, let's do it like that a little bit. So, but no, they have not done that, announced it yet. But the first game for the Hardwood Classic jerseys will be Friday, November 18th against the Pacers when they retire the Biggie. Elvin Hayes is number 44, be the seventh Rocket to get his jersey retired, his number retired in the organization. This is the 55th year of the Rockets franchise. So Andy, James, Will, Elvin Hayes, old school. Elvin Hayes, 16 seasons in the NBA. Never played fewer than 80 games in any season.
Wow.
Think about that.
No load management, huh?
Not at all. No load management whatsoever. He played 50,000 minutes in his NBA career.
Well, LeBron played that like his first 10 years in. Well, you know.
Yeah, okay. But, all right, we're going to wrap it up. Great talk. Always good talking with the crew. Appreciate it as always. Brother Gibson, you got it first. My man, how can folks get in touch with you on social media?
Can I get a couple things off? I just had
Sure.
just
Go ahead, sir.
A couple questions. Well, just recruiting-wise at Ohio State for last night's game. They had 61 recruits in the building last night. 61 football recruits. And 42 NFL personnel representing 27 teams. I say that because there was one basketball recruit, a 6'3" combo guard from Los Angeles, California, that the basketball team had in on an official visit that stole the show. Literally stole the show. This kid came in, worked out with the team, went to a practice in the morning, did his photo shoot, participated in shoot around, went to the game. His family left. He came back on campus. LeBron James Jr. took an official visit to Ohio State this weekend during the Notre Dame weekend. So that was why I differentiated earlier.
Understood.
LeBron James Sr., but Bronny was in the building. And Senior was there as well. And, of course, We Want Bronny chants went out in the shoe. And, I mean, who was in the shoe last night? Joe Burrow, Ezekiel Elliott, Orlando Pace, Jason Tatum, Andre Iguodala. Any and everybody was in the building last night. But Bronny James stole the show. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then I had a question, seriously, legitimately. I saw this. I had a chance to watch Dana Holgorsen's media availability on Monday. And didn't you guys tell me, was it Shipley Donuts is the new official donut and coffee?
Yes.
Of the Cougars, UH Cougars?
Yes.
Okay. Then I don't know. Somebody help me, because and please go back to watch this. Dana Holgorsen was unapologetically drinking a Starbucks coffee throughout the entire press conference. And I'm sitting there like, did somebody not say something to him? Like, yo, you can't do that. I don't know. And maybe I don't know. It just kind of threw me off. Like, I really wasn't listening to anything he was saying after that, because I'm like, didn't they just sign a coffee deal with somebody else? And like the SID, the AD, nobody came up and said, hey, coach, put that down. Or here, take this cup. Put it in there. That just seemed odd to me.
That's a great point. I didn't notice that. Well, James, you got any response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember him bringing that Starbucks cup. That did not come to mind. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that's a little surprising. If I'm Shipley's, I'm a little upset. I mean, even if you just get him a empty Shipley's cup and say, dump your Starbucks in here. Like, I mean, if you're paying money to the university, there's no reason why a competitor should be on your show. I guess the good thing for Shipley's was the stream was sort of glitchy, and I don't even know if it actually worked.
It didn't work on ESPN Plus. No.
They did post it on YouTube though.
Right.
So
that's where I saw it. Yeah.
To be fair, Shipley's is known more for their donuts than coffee, so there's a caveat there. But
the sponsorship deal is the drink too, official coffee drink of UA's athletics. So James, if you get a chance tomorrow, ask.
Please.
Ask. Don't ask Holgorsen. Ask somebody else. Ask, find out. Off the record, just ask. Bring it up, because that is a great point. Because piggybacking, tying it all together, as we wrap it up here on Folks Talking Sports, when UH women's hoops had announced their deal with Jordan, Coach Huey did a few media sessions with the previous apparel sponsor. And I had to tell him off the record, Coach, why are you wearing this? This is not Jordan. What is this? So, this is a big deal. If companies are investing in you, wear their stuff. And UH, y'all got to know that. Be better. I mean, if we're noticing that, I would assume the sponsor's noticing that too. Excuse me. Why is he wearing that and not? Why is this cup of that? Come on. Be better than that. We got to do better than that. we're happy with this money coming in, and we're potentially pissing off the sponsors already. That's not smart. All right.
My fault.
Question from Bugged Out. Let's see here, but wrap it up here. I think it's about why the Cougs went first on offense in OT.
Yeah.
It's a coin toss, right?
Yeah, they won the coin toss, which was surprising because you'd think typically a team would defer. They want to know what they have to do on offense. Joseph Duarte of the Houston Chronicle was told by some staffer in an article that he posted last night that they had some analytic that suggested it was a win was a higher likely outcome if they took the ball first. I don't know exactly where that came from, and that doesn't make a ton of sense. But, I mean, that's what Joseph was told by UH staffer, so that's the reasoning. Holgorsen didn't comment on it. No one asked him that, but yeah.
All right. James Mueller, you just spoke. The floor is yours, sir. Wrap it up. How can folks find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at JDM2186, and then all my work is at thedailycougar.com, and appreciate all the support I've been receiving recently. Great
job yesterday on the show, my man. Look forward to you doing what you're doing Saturday as well. And the host of Let's Rage Coogs, Andy Yanez. How can folks find you, sir?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter at Ayanez_5 as they see it scrolling under the screen. Real quickly, I just have to segue and say thanks to you, Kris, for allowing Let's Rage Coogs to be on the platform of the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. For all intents and purposes, it went as smooth as it possibly could. We had to learn how to. It was the first time I've ever had to do a live read, and had to do 6 of them throughout. So it was real interesting. And kudos to our 5-Star Properties, who's our primary sponsor for the first 4, for September of the football post-game shows. And obviously, of course, James, you came up clutch with the Dana Holgorsen clips, and then being able to join after. I think overall it couldn't have gone any better, so I'm just thankful for both of you, and we'll do it again this upcoming Saturday when U of H takes on Texas Tech. And then obviously, of course, when it comes to my stuff, once again covering UH in print, or not print, I guess web, for gallerysports.com that launched on Friday. Mattress Mac decided to launch his own sports coverage website, so I'm covering the University of Houston athletics for them. So I'm excited for that opportunity for once again to be able to stick around and cover UH in a different avenue. And obviously, of course, Let's Rage Coogs coming up on Saturday. And Pawd Slama Jama on Twitter, and Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube on City Control Room.
Great job, Andy. Again, James. Well, these youngsters are any indication of the future. It's in good hands. They did a great job yesterday on the post-game show. I'm Kris Gardner of Houston Roundball Review. See me on Twitter, VHR Review. As Andy touched on, got sponsor for Let's Rage Cougs. Got good news. Have sponsor for Talkin Sports. Will be announced for basketball season in November throughout the season. We're going to ride that Cougar wave, Will. We're going to ride as long as we can, man. So good news there. But you can follow me on Twitter at VHR Review. Go to the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel, Houston Roundball Review on Instagram, HoustonRoundballReview.com. A lot of fun. Thank you very much, everybody, for chiming in today, joining us on Folks Talk Sports Twitter account, on Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. Will, Andy, James, thank you again. Enjoy your Labor Day. Will, good luck on your fantasy football draft.
Thank you, sir.
And we will see everybody next week. And
NFL season starts.
Oh, yeah. So next Sunday, Will, Browns?
Yeah, they're on the road, so I should be cool.
Okay. So at what time?
7's cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's Eastern. 6 p.m. window is probably the best, right before when the second window closes and right before Sunday Night Football.
Okay. All right, everybody. Till next Sunday. Take care.
All right, sir.
Peace.
Deal.